I had no idea what was waiting for me when I returned from the toilet. The bar was crowded, music blaring, and people mingling. I squeezed through the throng, trying to make my way back to our table where I de-left my wife, Emily. But as I got closer, my blood started to boil. Some guy was sitting in my seat, his arm wrapped around Emily like he owned her. She was leaning into him, laughing at something he said. The sight made my stomach churn. "What the hell are you doing in my chair?" I demanded, my voice louder than I intended. Emily barely glanced at me. "Honey, find another seat," she said nonchalantly, her eyes still fixed on her new companion. A few people nearby started laughing, and I felt my face flush with anger and humiliation. Without thinking, I grabbed the guy by the hair and yanked him out of the seat, throwing him to the floor with all my strength. He barely had time to react before I landed a punch square on his jaw. He let out a yelp, but it was drowned out by the cheers and shouts of the onlookers. Before he could get up, I kicked him hard between the legs. He curled up in agony, but I wasn't done. I wanted him to feel every bit of the anger coursing through me. As I raised my fist for another blow, Emily's voice cut through the chaos. "Stop it, Patrick!" she screamed, grabbing my arm. "You are acting crazy!" "Crazy?" I spat back. "I am acting crazy. You are the one cozying up to some random guy while I am gone for 2 minutes. Emily's eyes narrowed, her expression shifting from surprise to cold anger. "He's not some random guy. This is Jack, my co-worker." "Your co-worker?" I echoed, incredulous. "Since when do co-workers get this friendly?" Emily rolled her eyes, a condescending smile playing on her lips. "Since always, Patrick. If you weren't so insecure, you'd know that." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was turning this around on me, making it seem like I was the problem. The guy Jack was slowly getting up, wincing in pain, but still managing to give me a smug look. "Listen, man," Jack said, his voice shaky. "We were just talking. No need to get all territorial. I saw red." "Talking? With your hands all over her?" Emily stepped between us, pushing me back. "Patrick, you're embarrassing me. Go cool off somewhere else." The onlookers were eating it up, whispering and pointing. My humiliation was complete. With one last glare at Jack, I turned on my heel and stormed out of the bar. My fists clenched and my mind racing. I stormed out of the bar, fuming. The night air was chilly, but it did nothing to cool my anger. I walked aimlessly, my thoughts a tangled mess of betrayal and rage. How could Emily do this to me? The image of her laughing with Jack was seared into my mind. After what felt like hours, I found myself at our front door. I hadn't planned on coming home so soon, but my feet had brought me here on autopilot. I took a deep breath and opened the door, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this was all a misunderstanding. Emily was already inside, sitting on the couch with a glass of wine in hand. She looked up when I entered, her expression a mix of annoyance and something else I couldn't quite place. "So, you are back," she said, taking a sip of her wine. "Did you calm down?" I clenched my fists, trying to keep my temper in check. "What the hell was that, Emily? How could you act like that in front of everyone?" She shrugged, unbothered. "You overreacted, Patrick. Jack is just a friend. We were having a good time until you decided to make a scene." "A good time?" I scoffed. "Is that what you call it? You were practically draped all over him." Emily rolled her eyes. "You are being ridiculous. Jack and I were just talking. If you weren't so insecure, you would see that." "Insecure," I repeated, my voice rising. "You are calling me insecure after you flirted with another man right in front of me." Emily set her glass down and stood up, crossing her arms over her chest. "Yes, Patrick, insecure. If you trusted me, you wouldn't have reacted like a jealous teenager." I took a step closer, my anger boiling over. "Trust? How can I trust you when you act like this? How many other friends are you getting cozy with when I'm not around?" Her eyes flashed with anger. "You are unbelievable. You know what? I am done talking about this. I am going to bed." She brushed past me, heading for the stairs. I grabbed her arm, stopping her in her tracks. "You are not done here, Emily. You need to explain yourself." She yanked her arm out of my grasp, her eyes blazing. "Explain myself. There's nothing to explain, Patrick. You're the one who needs to get a grip." Before I could respond, she stomped up the stairs, leaving me standing there, seething. I heard the bedroom door slam shut, the sound echoing through the empty house. I paced the living room, my mind racing. This wasn't just about Jack. There was something deeper going on, something Emily wasn't telling me. I needed to find out what it was. I sat down on the couch trying to think clearly. Emily had been acting strange for a while now. The late nights at work, the constant texting, the unexplained absences. It all pointed to something more than just a friendly coworker. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I grabbed my laptop and started searching. I checked her social media, looking for any signs of Jack or anyone else she might be spending time with. Her profiles were carefully curated with nothing out of the ordinary. But then I noticed something: her Instagram stories. She'd been posting a lot of pictures from work events, and in almost every one there was Jack, always close by, always smiling. I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. This wasn't just a one-time thing. There was definitely something going on between them. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling with anger. I needed to confront Emily, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. She was a master at deflecting and turning the tables, but I couldn't let this go. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. With a heavy heart, I climbed the stairs and opened the bedroom door. Emily was lying in bed, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I entered, her expression guarded. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. She sighed, putting her phone down. "What now, Patrick?" I took a deep breath, preparing myself for the confrontation. "I know there's more going on with you and Jack. I saw the pictures. You need to tell me the truth." Emily's eyes widened, but she quickly composed herself. "What pictures? You're being paranoid." "Auntie, lie to me, Emily," I said, my voice firm. "I deserve to know what is really happening." She stared at me for a long moment. Then her expression softened. "Patrick, I just then—" Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face paled. Without a word, she grabbed her phone and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" I demanded. "I need to take this," she said, avoiding my gaze. "She asks work." I watched her leave, a knot of dread tightening in my chest. I had a feeling this was far from over. The house felt eerily quiet after Emily left. I stood in the bedroom for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. She was obviously hiding something, and I was determined to find out what it was. I decided to start with her phone. It was risky, but I needed answers. I grabbed my laptop and used it to connect to our home network, hoping to find some way to access her phone remotely. It took a while, but eventually I managed to get into her cloud backups. My heart pounded as I scrolled through her messages, looking for anything suspicious. There it was, dozens of messages between her and Jack. They ranged from casual banter to more intimate conversations. My stomach churned as I read them, the betrayal sinking in deeper with every word. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Emily had always been so affectionate, so loving. How could she do this to me? The more I read, the angrier I became. This wasn't just a harmless flirtation, it was a full-blown affair. I sat back, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. Emily had always been the one constant in my life, and now it felt like everything was falling apart. I needed to confront her, but I wanted to do it face to face. Hours passed, and I heard the front door open. Emily was back. I took a deep breath and went downstairs to meet her. She was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of water. She looked up as I entered, her expression wary. "Patrick, we need to talk," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. I nodded. "Yeah, we do." We sat down at the kitchen table, the tension between us palpable. I didn't waste any time. "I know about you and Jack," I said bluntly. Her eyes widened, but she quickly recovered. "What are you talking about? I found to play dumb, Emily. I saw the messages. I know everything." She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Okay, fine. Yes, I've been seeing Jack, but it's not what you think." I laughed bitterly. "Not what I think. You were flirting with him right in front of me, and now you're telling me it's nothing?" Emily shook her head. "It's complicated, Patrick. Jack and we've been spending a lot of time together because of work. It just happened. It's happened," I repeated, incredulous. "That is your excuse. You didn't even try to hide it." Her eyes flashed with anger. "You don't understand. Jack and I connected on a level you and I never did." "Connected?" I scoffed. "We've been together for years, Emily. I thought we had something special." She looked away, her voice softening. "We did. But things changed. We changed." "Dawn to give me that bullshit," I snapped. "You cheated on me, and now you are trying to justify it. Do you even care about us anymore?" Emily's eyes filled with tears. Of course I do, but things have been different between us for a long time, Patrick. You just didn't see it. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside. So what now? Are you leaving me for him? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't know. I just need time to figure things out. I stood up, my anger boiling over. I knew you were going to be the same. You've had all the time in the world, Emily, and you chose to spend it with him. She didn't respond, her silence speaking volumes. I can do this, I said, my voice breaking. I need some space. I'm going to stay with a friend for a few days. Emily nodded, her expression one of resignation. I understand. I packed a bag and left the house, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. I felt lost, betrayed, and utterly alone. I needed to clear my head and figure out what to do next. As I drove to my friend Tyler S.'s place, I realized that this was just the beginning. Emily S.'s betrayal had shattered our life together, and I wasn't sure if we could ever put the pieces back together. I drove aimlessly for a while, the streets blurring together as I tried to make sense of everything. Eventually, I found myself outside Tyler S.'s apartment. I hadn't told him I was coming, but I hoped he'd understand. I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding in my chest. Tyler opened the door, his eyes widening and surprised. Patrick, what are you doing here? I sighed, feeling the weight of the last few hours crash down on me. I need a place to stay for a few days. Can I crash here? He stepped aside, ushering me in. Of course, man, come in. What's going on? He sat down on his couch and I told him everything, from the incident at the bar to the messages I found on Emily S.'s phone. Tyler listened quietly, his expression growing darker with every word. Jesus, Patrick, he said when I finished. I had no idea it was this bad. Neither did I replied, running a hand through my hair. I don't know what to do, Ty. I feel like my whole world is falling apart. Tyler nodded, leaning back in his seat. It is a tough situation, no doubt about it. You are welcome to stay here as long as you need. Thanks, I said, grateful for his support. I just need some time to think. Over the next few days, I tried to keep myself busy. Tyler and I watched movies, played video games, and talked about everything but Emily. It was a welcome distraction, but the nagging pain in my chest never really went away. One evening, as we were sitting on the couch with a couple of beers, Tyler turned to me, a serious look on his face. So, what are you going to do, Patrick? About Emily, I mean. I took a long sip of my beer, contemplating his question. I don't know. Part of me wants to try and work things out, but another part of me feels like it is too late. How can I ever trust her again? Tyler nodded thoughtfully. Trust is hard to rebuild once it has been broken, but it is not impossible. The question is, do you think it's worth it? I stared at the floor, the weight of his words sinking in. I don't know, I admitted. I love her, but this betrayal, it's like a knife in my heart. Maybe you should talk to her, Tyler suggested. Really talk to her. Find out why she did what she did. Maybe there's more to the story than you know. I nodded slowly. Yeah, maybe you're right, but it's going to be hard. He clapped me on the shoulder. I am here for you, man, whatever you decide. The next morning, I decided to take Tyler's advice. I needed to confront Emily again, but this time I was determined to get the whole truth. I drove back to our house, my mind racing with questions and doubts. When I walked through the door, I found Emily sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at a cup of coffee. She looked up as I entered, her eyes red and puffy. Patrick, she said softly, I didn't expect you back so soon. I sat down across from her, my heart heavy. We need to talk, Emily. I need to understand why you did this. She nodded, wiping away a tear. I know. I've been thinking a lot about it, too. Then start talking, I said. My voice firm, but not unkind. Emily took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. It started a few months ago. Jack and I were working late on a project, and we just connected. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt something with him that I haven't felt in a long time. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my emotions in check. And what about us? What happened to us? She looked down, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know, Patrick. We've been growing apart for a while now. I didn't realize how much until Jack came along. So you decided to have an affair? I asked, my voice rising. Instead of talking to me, you chose to betray me. I'm sorry, she said, her eyes filling with tears again. I never meant to hurt you. I was confused and I made a terrible mistake. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Do you love him? She shook her head vehemently. No, it was never about love. It was about feeling something I thought I had lost. Her words cut deep, but I needed to know the truth. Do you still want to be with me, Emily? She looked up, her eyes pleading. Yes, Patrick. I love you. I want to make this work, but I understand if you can to forgive me. I stared at her, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. I loved her, but the betrayal was still fresh, the wound still raw. Could I ever forgive her? Could we ever go back to the way things were? I don't know, I said finally. I need time to think. Emily nodded, her expression resigned. Take all the time you need. I'll be here waiting. I stood up feeling a strange mix of relief and sorrow. I'll let you know what I decide. As I left the house, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but at least I had taken the first step towards finding a resolution. I spent the next few days at Tyler S. Place mulling over everything Emily had said. My emotions were a tangled mess of love, betrayal, anger, and sadness. Tyler was a constant support, giving me space when I needed it, and lending a sympathetic ear when I was ready to talk. One evening, as we were sitting on his balcony, Tyler spoke up. You know, Patrick, sometimes it's not about fixing what's broken. Sometimes it's about starting fresh. I looked at him confused. What do you mean? He sighed, taking a sip of his beer. Maybe trying to fix things with Emily isn't the right move. Maybe you need to focus on yourself for a while. Figure out what you really want. His words made sense, but the thought of ending things with Emily was almost unbearable. He built a life together, shared so many memories. How could I just throw all that away? How do I even begin to do that? I asked, feeling lost. One step at a time, Tyler replied. Start by deciding what is best for you. Not for Emily, not for anyone else, just you. I nodded, taking his advice to heart. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. I needed to talk to Emily again, but this time it would be on my terms. I drove back to our house, my resolve firm. Emily was sitting in the living room looking up when I entered. Her face was etched with worry, but she didn't say anything. Emily, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady. She nodded, motioning for me to sit down. Okay, I am listening. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. I've been thinking a lot about everything that has happened, and I think Tyler is right. Maybe we can fix what's broken. Maybe we need to start fresh. Her eyes widened, fear and sadness flashing across her face. Are you saying you want a divorce? I don't know, I admitted, but I think we need to separate, at least for a while. I need time to figure things out, and I think you do too. Emily's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. Patrick, please, I know I messed up, but I love you. I want to make this work. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside. I love you too, Emily, but right now I need to focus on myself. We both do. She nodded, wiping her tears. If that is what you need, I'll respect that. But please, don't you give up on us completely. I won't, I promised. But we need time apart to see if we can rebuild what we had. We talked for a while longer, discussing the logistics of our separation. Emily agreed to stay with a friend for a few weeks, giving us both the space we needed. It was a difficult conversation, but it felt like the right decision. As Emily packed a bag and left the house, I felt a strange sense of relief. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a while, I felt like I was taking control of my life. The house felt empty without Emily. The silence was deafening, but it also gave me the space I needed to think. I spent the first few days in a daze, trying to adjust to the new normal. Tyler checked in on me frequently, making sure I wasn't drowning in my thoughts. One evening, he suggested we go out to a new bar that had just opened downtown. You need to get out of the house, Patrick. Clear your head a bit. I reluctantly agreed, knowing he was right. We arrived at the bar, a trendy place with dim lighting and a lively atmosphere. It was packed, but we managed to find a couple of seats at the bar. As we ordered our drinks, Tyler nudged me. Look, I am not saying you need to jump back into the dating scene, but it wouldn't hurt to talk to someone new. I glanced around, feeling a bit out of place. I don't know, Ty. I am not really in the mood. He shrugged, taking a sip of his beer. Just try to have a good time. You deserve it. I nodded, but my mind was still on Emily and everything that had happened. I needed a distraction, something to take my mind off the mess my life had become. That distraction came in the form of a woman who took the seat next to me. She was tall and had long, dark hair that cascaded down her back. She glanced at me and smiled, her green eyes sparkling. "Hey," she said, her voice warm and inviting. "Mind if I sit here?" "Not at all," I replied, trying to match her smile. She extended her hand. "I am Rachel." "Patrick?" I said, shaking her hand. We started talking, and to my surprise, the conversation flowed easily. Rachel was smart, funny, and had a way of making me feel at ease. For the first time in weeks, I found myself genuinely enjoying someone-ass company. As the night went on, we talked about everything from our favorite movies to our career ambitions. It felt good to connect with someone new to forget about my troubles for a while. Tyler eventually excused himself, giving me a knowing look as he left. I stayed, enjoying the conversation with Rachel. We ended up closing the bar down, and as we left, she gave me her number. "I had a great time tonight," she said. "Maybe we can do this again sometime?" I nodded, feeling a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. I like that. After the next few weeks, Rachel and I started seeing each other regularly. It was nothing serious, just two people enjoying each other's company. She knew about my situation with Emily, and she was understanding and patient. Meanwhile, Emily and I continued our separation. We kept in touch, mostly through text messages and occasional phone calls. She was staying with a friend and focusing on her own healing process. It was hard, but the space seemed to be helping both of us. One afternoon, I decided to visit my parents. They'd been worried about me and wanted to know how I was holding up. As I sat in their cozy living room sipping on a cup of tea, my mom gave me a concerned look. "How are you really doing, Patrick?" she asked, her voice gentle. I sighed, setting my cup down. "I am managing. It's been tough, but I think the separation was the right move." My dad nodded, his expression serious. "Did you need to take a step back to see things clearly? Have you thought about what you want to do next?" my mom asked. I hesitated, unsure of how to answer. "I don't know yet. I'm seeing someone new, but it's nothing serious, and Emily and I are still figuring things out." My mom reached over and squeezed my hand. "Just take your time, Patrick. You will figure it out." I left my parents' house feeling a bit more at ease. They were right. I needed to take things one step at a time. The future was uncertain, but I was starting to feel hopeful. Days turned into weeks, and my life slowly started to regain some semblance of normalcy. I spent time with Rachel, who became a steady source of comfort and distraction. She was understanding about my situation with Emily, and our relationship remained light and casual. But Emily was never far from my thoughts. Our separation gave me space to think, but it also brought a sense of unresolved tension. We needed to have another serious conversation about our future. I decided it was time to face her again, to figure out if there was anything left worth salvaging. I called Emily and asked if we could meet. She agreed, and we arranged to meet at a quiet coffee shop we used to frequent. When I arrived, Emily was already there nursing a cup of tea. She looked up as I approached, her face a mixture of apprehension and hope. "Hi, Patrick," she said softly. "Hi, Emily," I replied, taking a seat across from her. For a moment we just sat there in silence, both unsure of where to start. Finally, I took a deep breath and spoke. "We need to talk about us. About what happens next," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Emily nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know, I have been thinking a lot about it too." "Do you still love me?" I asked bluntly, needing to hear her answer. She looked down at her hands, then back up at me. "Yes, Patrick, I do, but I understand if you can to forgive me. What I did was unforgivable." I sighed, feeling a weight on my chest. "I don't know if I can ever forget what happened, but I also can ignore the years we spent together. He had something real, something worth fighting for." Emily nodded, her expression earnest. "I want to fight for us, Patrick. I know I messed up, and I know it won't be easy, but I am willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild your trust." "Trust is hard to rebuild," I said, echoing Tyler's words, "but maybe we can try, slowly, one step at a time." She smiled, a small glimmer of hope in her eyes. "I am willing to do that, whatever it takes." We spent the next few hours talking, really talking. We laid everything out on the table, From the reasons behind her affair to the things that had been missing in our relationship. It was painful and raw, but it felt necessary. As we left the coffee shop, I felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. We had a long way to go, but at least we were taking the first steps towards healing. That night I called Rachel and told her about my meeting with Emily. She listened quietly. Her understanding and patience a balm to my troubled heart. "Patrick, I want you to do what's best for you," she said. "If that means working things out with Emily, then I support you. You need to follow your heart." "Thank you, Rachel," I said, grateful for her kindness. "I appreciate your understanding. I still want to see where things go with us, but I need to figure things out with Emily first." "Take your time," she replied. "I am here for you no matter what." Over the next few weeks, Emily and I continued to work on our relationship. We attended counseling sessions where we dug deep into our issues and tried to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. It was a slow process, filled with setbacks and small victories, but we were both committed to making it work. At the same time, I maintained my connection with Rachel. She became a confidant, someone I could talk to without judgment. Our relationship remained light and uncomplicated, a stark contrast to the heavy emotional work I was doing with Emily. One evening, after a particularly intense counseling session, I found myself at a crossroads. I sat in my car, staring at my phone. I had two numbers in my contacts, Emily and Rachel, two different paths, two different futures. I dialed Rachel's number, needing her perspective. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, Patrick," she said, her voice warm and comforting. "Hey, Rachel, can we meet? I need to talk." "Of course," she replied. "Come over. I am here." I drove to Rachel's place, my mind racing with thoughts and doubts. When I arrived, she welcomed me with a hug and led me to the couch. We sat down, and I poured out everything that was on my mind. "I am so confused, Rachel," I said, my voice breaking. "I love Emily, but I don't know if I can ever fully trust her again. And then there's you. You have been so understanding and supportive. I don't know what to do." Rachel took my hand, her touch soothing. "Patrick, I can tell you what to do, but I can tell you that whatever decision you make, it needs to be what is best for you, not for Emily, not for me, just for you." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I don't want to hurt anyone, but I can keep living in this limbo." She leaned in, kissing my forehead gently. "Take your time, follow your heart. You'll find the right path." As I left Rachel's place that night, I felt a sense of clarity. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew I needed to follow my heart wherever it might lead. The drive back from Rachel's place was a quiet one, filled with introspection. I knew that the next steps I took would define my future, and I needed to be absolutely sure of my decision. The weight of the choices before me was immense, but I felt a glimmer of clarity beginning to form. I arrived home late that night, the house silent and still. Emily was staying with a friend, giving us both the space we needed. I walked through the empty rooms, memories of happier times, flashing before my eyes. Our laughter, our arguments, the quiet moments of contentment, everything was a part of the life we had built together. The next morning, I decided it was time to talk to Emily again. I needed to be honest with her about everything, including my feelings for Rachel. It was the only way to move forward, whether that meant trying to rebuild our marriage or letting it go. I called Emily and asked if we could meet. She agreed, and we arranged to meet at the park where we used to go for walks on Sundays. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting on a bench by the pond. She looked up as I approached, her face a mix of hope and fear. "Hi, Patrick," she said softly. "Hi, Emily," I replied, taking a seat next to her. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the ducks glide across the water. Finally, I turned to her, my heart heavy with the weight of what I was about to say. "Emily, I have been doing a lot of thinking," I began, "and I need to be completely honest with you." She nodded, her eyes fixed on mine. "I appreciate that. I've been thinking a lot, too." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I still love you, Emily. But I'm not sure if we can ever go back to the way things were. The trust has been broken, and I don't know if it can be fully rebuilt." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "I understand, Patrick. I know I have hurt you deeply, and I don't expect forgiveness overnight, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." "There's more," I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. I've been seeing someone else. Her name is Rachel, and she has been a great support for me during this time. Our relationship is casual, but it has made me realize that maybe we need to let each other go. Emily's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. I see. So you're saying you want a divorce? I shook my head, my own eyes filling with tears. I'm not sure. Part of me wants to try and work things out, but another part of me feels like we both need to move on. I just want to be honest with you about everything. She nodded, wiping her tears. I appreciate your honesty, Patrick. I really do. But this is hard to hear. I still love you and I want to fight for us. But I also understand if you need to move on. We sat in silence for a while, both lost in our thoughts. Finally, Emily spoke up. Maybe you're right, she said, her voice trembling. Maybe we need to take a step back and see if there's anything left to rebuild. I love you, Patrick, but I don't want to hold you back if your heart is somewhere else. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. I love you too, Emily, but I think we both need time to figure things out. Let us take this separation seriously and see where it leads us. She nodded, tears still streaming down her face. Okay, let us do that. We stood up and I pulled her into a hug. It was a bittersweet moment filled with both sadness and a glimmer of hope. As we parted, I felt a sense of resolution. This was the right decision, no matter how painful it was. Over the next few weeks, Emily and I maintained our separation. We spoke occasionally, but we both focused on our own healing. I continued to see Rachel, who remained a constant source of support and understanding. One evening, as Rachel and I were having dinner at her place, she looked at me thoughtfully. "How are you feeling about everything?" she asked, her eyes full of concern. I sighed, setting my fork down. It's been tough, but I think it was the right decision. Emily and I need this time apart, and I'm grateful for your support, Rachel. You've been amazing. She smiled, reaching across the table to take my hand. I am here for you, Patrick. No matter what happens, as I looked into her eyes, I felt a sense of peace. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I knew I was on the right path. Whether that path led me back to Emily or to a new beginning with Rachel, I was ready to face it. The following weeks were a period of reflection and introspection. Emily and I maintained our separation, giving each other the space to heal and think. During this time, I continued to see Rachel, who provided much-needed support and companionship. But even as our relationship grew, the unresolved issues with Emily weighed heavily on my mind. One evening, I decided to visit my therapist, Dr. Matthews. I needed clarity, and I hoped he could help me sort through my tangled emotions. As I sat in his cozy office, I felt a sense of relief. This was a safe space where I could speak freely. Dr. Matthews, I am at a crossroads, I began. I've been seeing Rachel, and she's been wonderful, but I still have unresolved feelings for Emily. I'm not sure what to do. Dr. Matthews nodded, his expression thoughtful. It's eyes understandable, Patrick. You've been through a lot, and it's natural to feel conflicted. Let's break it down. What do you feel when you are with Rachel? I took a deep breath considering his question. Rachel makes me feel understood and supported. She is kind, patient, and there's an ease in our relationship that I haven't felt in a long time. And what about Emily? Dr. Matthews asked gently. With Emily at S complicated, I admitted. There is a lot of history, both good and bad. I still love her, but the trust is broken. I'm afraid we might never get back to what we had. Dr. Matthews leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. Patrick, it's important to understand that trust, once broken, can be rebuilt, but it takes time and effort from both parties. It also requires a willingness to forgive and move forward. Do you think you and Emily are both willing to put in that work? I sighed, feeling the weight of his words. I don't know. Emily says she has willing, but part of me is afraid of getting hurt again. And then there's Rachel. I don't want to lead her on if my heart is still with Emily. Dr. Matthews nodded. It is a difficult situation, but it is crucial to be honest with both Emily and Rachel. They both deserve to know where you stand. Have you talked to Rachel about your feelings for Emily? Not fully, I admitted. I didn't want to hurt her, but I know I need to be honest. Transparency is key, Dr. Matthews said. Talk to Rachel, and when you are ready, have another conversation with Emily. You need to be clear about what you want, and that clarity will come from being honest with yourself and with them. I left Dr. Matthews' office feeling a bit lighter, but also aware of the difficult conversations ahead. That evening, I called Rachel and asked if we could meet. She suggested a quiet cafe, and I agreed. When I arrived, Rachel was already there, a warm smile on her face. We ordered our drinks and settled into a corner booth. "Patrick, you sounded serious on the phone," she said, her eyes searching mine. "What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "Rachel, I need to be honest with you. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my situation with Emily, and I realized I still have unresolved feelings for her." Rachel nodded, her expression unreadable. "I appreciate your honesty, Patrick. I knew this was a possibility when we started seeing each other." "I care about you a lot, Rachel," I continued, "but I don't want to lead you on or hurt you. I need to figure things out with Emily before I can truly move forward." Rachel reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. "I understand, Patrick, and I want you to do what is best for you. If that means taking a step back to resolve things with Emily, then I support you." "Thank you, Rachel," I said, squeezing her hand. "You've been amazing, and I appreciate your understanding." We finished our drinks and parted ways with a hug. As I walked back to my car, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. Rachel deserved someone who could give her their full heart, and I wasn't in a place to do that yet. The next day, I called Emily and asked if we could meet. She agreed, and we decided to meet at our house. When I arrived, she was waiting in the living room, looking anxious. "Patrick, what is going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, sitting down across from her. "Emily, I need to be honest with you. I've been seeing Rachel, and she's been wonderful, but I've realized that I still have unresolved feelings for you. I can move forward with her until I figure things out with us." Tears filled her eyes, but she nodded. "I understand, Patrick, and I am willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild our trust and our relationship. But we need to be honest with each other and take it one step at a time." "I agree," I said, my voice firm. "Let us start by taking things slow. We'll continue our counseling sessions, and we'll work on rebuilding our trust and communication." Emily smiled through her tears, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "I can do that. I am committed to making this work." As we embraced, I felt a sense of resolution. The path ahead was uncertain, but we were both willing to put in the effort. It wouldn't be easy, but it was a step in the right direction. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and hard work. Emily and I committed ourselves to rebuilding our relationship, taking it one day at a time. It wasn't easy, but we were determined to make it work. We attended counseling sessions regularly, where we learned to communicate more effectively and address the issues that had driven us apart. Our counselor, Dr. Parker, guided us through exercises that helped us rebuild trust and reconnect on a deeper level. One evening, after an especially intense session, Emily and I sat on the porch, sipping tea and reflecting on our progress. "You know," Emily said, her voice soft, "I am really grateful for these sessions. I feel like we're finally starting to understand each other again." I nodded, feeling a sense of warmth and hope. "Me too. It has been tough, but I think we are on the right track." She reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you for giving us another chance, Patrick. I promise I'll do everything I can to make things right." I squeezed her hand back, feeling a surge of love and determination. "We all do it together, Emily. One step at a time." As the weeks turned into months, we continued to work on our relationship. We went on dates, rediscovered our shared interests, and made a conscious effort to spend quality time together. Slowly but surely, the wounds began to heal and the trust started to rebuild. One Saturday afternoon, Emily and I decided to go for a hike, a favorite activity we hadn't done in a long time. The trail was peaceful, the autumn leaves crunching under our boots as we walked hand in hand. "This feels nice," Emily said, taking a deep breath of the crisp mountain air. "Just being out here with you," I smiled, squeezing her hand. "Yeah, it does. It reminds me of when we first started dating." She laughed softly. "I remember that. We used to come up here all the time." We reached a scenic overlook, the valley below bathed in golden sunlight. She sat down on a rock, taking in the view. Emily rested her head on my shoulder, and I wrapped my arm around her. "Patrick," she said after a while, her voice thoughtful, "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, and I realized that rebuilding our relationship isn't just about fixing the past. It's about creating a new future together." I nodded, understanding what she meant. "You are right. We can't change what happened, but we can learn from it and make sure we don't make the same mistakes again." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with determination. "I want to build a future with you, Patrick. A future where we are both happy and fulfilled. I want that too, Emily," I said, my heart swelling with love and hope. "Let's make it happen." As we hiked back down the trail, I felt a sense of renewal. The path ahead was still uncertain, but we were walking it together, ready to face whatever challenges came our way. At home, we decided to cook dinner together, something simple and comforting. As we worked side by side in the kitchen, I felt a sense of peace and contentment that I hadn't felt in a long time. After dinner, we sat on the couch, cuddled up under a blanket. Emily turned to me, a shy smile on her face. "Patrick, there is something I want to talk to you about," she said, her voice hesitant. "What is on your mind?" I asked, curious. "I know it is still early, but I've been thinking about our future, about what we want out of life," she said, taking a deep breath. "And I want to start a family with you when we're ready, of course." Her words took me by surprise, but in a good way. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "I'd like that too, Emily. When the time is right, I think it would be wonderful." She smiled, tears of happiness in her eyes. "I'm glad to hear that. I just wanted you to know that I am committed to our future, whatever it may hold." We sat there in comfortable silence, holding each other close. The road ahead would undoubtedly have its ups and downs, but I felt confident that we could face it together. In the weeks that followed, Emily and I continued to grow closer. We celebrated small victories like getting through a day without arguing or completing a difficult counseling exercise. We also learned to navigate setbacks, using them as opportunities to learn and grow. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, I turned to Emily and took her hand. "Emily, there's something I want to say." I began, my heart pounding. "I've realized that despite everything that happened, my love for you has only grown stronger. I am willing to keep fighting for us, for our future. I want to rebuild our life together, and I believe we can make it even better than before." Tears filled her eyes as she squeezed my hand. "I feel the same way, Patrick. I love you, and I'm so grateful for this second chance. Let's keep building our future together one step at a time." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the landscape, I felt a sense of peace and contentment. Emily and I had faced our darkest moments and come out stronger on the other side. Our journey was far from over, but we were ready to face it together, hand in hand, with love and hope guiding our way. And thus, Patrick and Emily began a new chapter in their lives, one built on the lessons learned from the past and the hope for a brighter future. Their journey was a testament to the power of love, forgiveness, and the willingness to fight for what truly mattered.